know, and if you do not know, you'll find out today more about Meraki, Cisco's acquisition of Meraki. That happened approximately, 2.5 years ago. And we signed up with as a Meraki partner at the time that Cisco was going through the process of acquiring Meraki. And during that time, I met Todd Nightingale. I met the founders of the Meraki team. I met a lot of incredible people at Meraki. And I'm not sure where that comes from. So Meraki is an incredible company. A lot of incredible, very talented individuals. A company that cares. But Todd Nightingale is the Vice President and General Manager of Meraki. He actually went to school at MIT with the founders of Meraki. He understands, where they came from. He understands the vision that was there, and he's continuing that vision into the future. And Cisco's pretty much been hands-off in terms of how that, the Meraki is run and that synergy of what they've been able to pull together. Without any further ado, Todd.
Hi, everybody. Mic is working? Yeah. My name is Todd Nightingale. I run the Meraki business for Cisco. And I want to really thank the Outsiders for having me here. We work with a lot of partners. Obviously, I need to sell equipment into places that are like on the East Coast and the West Coast. So I have to use other partners. And I do occasionally get angry customer calls. I don't know if you guys have ever been let down by your integrator, your installer, by your partner. I get that. It's not that uncommon. I get maybe one a month. And I have never gotten one from an AOS customer. I think, this idea of a real family company, it rings true, not just the fact that they all look the same. But they take a lot of pride in their work, and when we vet out partners and accept people in the partner community from Meraki, we look for technical expertise. We look for a good wireless program, good solid networking across the board. We want them to be able to understand security and sell our whole stack. But by far the most important thing is that they stand by their work and they strive for 100% customer satisfaction. I think AOS does that better than anyone. So I'm really, really happy to be here, and I want to thank you guys for all of that. So thank you. So I was thinking about what to present here, and it said keynote speech, so it can't be a sales pitch. It's a shame, because that's my comfort zone. So, yeah. I don't know the right slides. I'll leave it in. But I do want to talk a little bit about the technology trends. So Meraki, for me, that was the fourth startup that I joined in my career. After I left grad school, I had some wins and some losses. And if you work at a startup for 3 years and you spend 80-hour weeks building some crazy ultra-high-performing silicon and sleeping in the office, and then one day you and the CEO have to sit there and lock up the door and hand the keys to the real estate agent and shut down the company, it tears your heart out. I think the difference between really successful startups, really successful companies, enterprises of any kind, is just having vision, right? Understanding the trends. And a lot of people present, and I've heard a lot of presentations on understanding market trends and technology trends. And I think when it comes to this sort of thing in the tech industry, especially when it comes to building new kinds of technology and bringing the state of the art forward, the thing that we don't talk about enough and the thing we don't do, people in my position, we don't think about, if I know what the trend is, how do I react to that? Or how do I force part of the trend? How can create a trend if it hasn't started. So that's sort of what I wanted to talk about today. All right, here we go. There's a couple macro trends that high tech has been tracking for years and years. First one's sort of like this massive proliferation of devices. How many people are carrying more than 2 devices with them today? More than 2. That's better than I thought. I'm only carrying 2. That's not the best. But I do believe that this idea of high proliferation of devices, it's changing the industry. It's like a macro trend. Everyone knows it. No one's confused. No one thinks maybe this isn't really happening. Like everyone bought their 8-year-old their second iPad, and they kind of know there's a massive proliferation of mobile devices, right? And probably mostly thanks to this guy. He is like to blame for most of this, and he made it accessible to have devices, and then went beyond that, not just accessible, but made them connected, and that was a big one. The other big trend, and another macro trend in the world, and nowadays I report into Cisco, so I'm a big fan of this trend. It helps my stock price. People started to use the internet. That's a major trend, the internet. It's a big deal. And one thing that's nice about it is the use of it has gone beyond dorks in their basement, logging onto bulletin boards. That used to be me, so I know what it was like back then. And it's gone beyond social. It's become a business relevant topic, and as we all know, that's all thanks to this guy. I had a picture of Bob Metcalf on here, but no one recognized who he was. Anyone know who Bob Metcalf is?
Park. He's an inventor of Ethernet.
Inventor of Ethernet, Xerox PARC, and got essentially no credit for it.
Founder of
Yes. You guys know him. How come no one in San Francisco? Because he's a boss. It's because he's a boss. That's why I know him.
He's a Kennedy.
So if we look at those 2 macro trends, and we're sitting in San Francisco, and we've got a startup, and we think we're doing great because we're selling access points, or Scott's selling them for us. We look at these things and we realize, hey, there's this enormous explosion of mobile devices. Let's make mobile devices. Apple could do it. Why can't we do it? Because Apple's really good at it, and we're not going to be good at it. So it's pretty easy for us to understand that we're going to fail at making mobile devices. And then we can make components for those devices. Component companies very rarely change the world, so that's not that interesting. But having the vision to realize that, hey, if we have these 2 major trends, we've got massive proliferation of devices, we've got massive acceptance of the internet, even for business, that's going to create market opportunity across the board. And one market opportunity that we tracked very, very closely and decided to launch into the market was this, mobile device management. An issue with mobile device management is you're sort of at the mercy of the people building the devices. If Google and Apple decide tomorrow, I don't want to support any mobile device management companies, I want to try and kill them as best as possible, make it hard as best as possible, then we would all be sort of out of business. And that goes for all of the community, from the VMware, AirWatch stuff, Mobile Iron, all of that stuff. But they haven't done that. Apple kind of dipped their toe in the water and then backed out. So it's everyone breathed a sigh of relief. But what this really meant was basically an entire new sector. Gartner now is building a magic quadrant for this, which means Gartner accepts that this is like a real market, just like Wi-Fi or switching. And they think it'll be $3 to $4 billion business, $3 to $4 billion market in the next year or 2, right? To give you kind of like a shirt size on that, all of Wi-Fi is like $4 to $5 billion. So it's like all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it grew up, and it grew up far faster than wireless. Wi-Fi has been in the market since 1999 as a ratified standard and product. This has been part of real product with any kind of growth only for like 5 years. Right? That's incredibly fast. And people think that the speed that this stuff is happening is accelerating. Markets keep coming and going faster and faster. I don't know if that's really true. I think what the perception is that these things are going faster and faster just because there's a lot more of them starting up right now. There's a lot of industry starting up. There's an enormous amount of tech investment going on. So I'd love to tell you the Meraki story and how we jumped in. We thought that we should use mobile device management to generate leads to sell more Wi-Fi access points. And we did that for 3 years. And I got to tell you, that's like the worst decision we ever made in launching into this market. Find a CEO who tells you about the worst decisions they've ever made. It's hard to do, but like, it's a terrible decision. And what we did, the mistake we made was that we didn't respect the macro trend. The macro trend of device proliferation would necessarily cause, CIOs at schools who have to manage a one-to-one initiative with students, retailers who have kiosks that are actually just iPads on stand, everyone who's got BYOD issues of enterprises and commercial accounts. All of those people, they almost necessarily are going to have a problem that they cannot manage 10,000 iPads all at once. And that industry, it should have been obvious to me and the rest of Meraki 4 years ago that this was going to be an enormous market we wanted to be in. And instead, it was just software, not hardware. We weren't making the devices. We weren't sure if Google and Apple would let us in. And so we decided to use it as a lead gen tool because we knew there was something, but we didn't bet. And man, kills me. So now I'm rapid catch-up. 6 months ago, 9 months ago, we launched our real enterprise-grade product. We put it in as a full enterprise feature set through the Cisco price system. Bring it up. Now we're in the market again. I feel like I'm the last pro of the dance, so no worries. All of these guys have also done some version of it, so that's a good group of people to be up against. I think it's a very healthy, competitive market. By the way, I think you are all probably being well served by the fact that there are lots of smart people fighting and kicking and screaming. The other story, though, that's interesting here is AirWatch. See, if I was really giving the sales pitch, I wouldn't talk about compensation. AirWatch had another interesting story, and I think they made some interesting missteps along the way, too. Their product started as a management suite because they were trying to manage lots of access points. It was Cisco access points, actually. They were running kind of like a Wi-Fi managed service. They just wanted to manage as many access points as they could, make it easier. So they started building something to manage access points. Turns out it wasn't good at that. It wasn't great at managing access points. But it also started to manage maybe some computers, and then one thing led to another, and that same product started managing all kinds of mobile computers and thing. And the AirWatch product was sort of built out of a Wi-Fi managed service. So they were able to kind of make the right pivot to the space. And I think, to be honest, they had good vision in seeing that there was real value to that market, and that the market transition of this device proliferation was going to matter. Give me my numbers.
You're at 15.
Okay, great. So I think that what AirWatch did at the beginning of this market, which was 5-6 years ago, was almost perfect. They pivoted in. If you start with a startup that's horrible, and you're able to pivot and change to something that's great, kudos to you. That's actually the best startups are like that. Almost shows that you're fit, that you can make the pivot. We ourselves, at Meraki, we made 2 pivots to get where we are, so I respect the pivot. The thing AirWatch didn't do probably is now they are carrying around all the legacy of super old devices, and they haven't been able to look into that future of, hey, the future is in these 3 or 4 platforms and getting the richest possible functionality out of it. But regardless, I think it's a good market. So here's another one. We track this MPLS problem quite a bit. So I'm going to assume everyone here manages more than one site. Otherwise, this won't work. But how many people connect their sites with MPLS or some other kind of private IP network? And how many people have all their sites direct internet connectivity? All right. I'm going to say 15% direct internet connectivity. You guys are on the cutting edge, I believe. So I think that the trend we're seeing right now the trend we're seeing right now is the old model was I have a server room in my headquarters, and it has my CRM, it has my grading systems, it has my HR, all of the compute that I need for my company. If I'm not let's say I'm a school or I'm a retailer, I have all of my systems in my server room. Or if you're really cutting edge, you have it in your data center, right? And all of your sites need to connect and use those systems, and so you connect them, usually hub and spoke style, back to your central core. What that means is 99% of your traffic is between your own sites, and probably just like 1% is out to the internet. And the architects of most of these systems, Cisco included and other people, they realize, hey, the internet is scary and bad. There's hackers, it's evil, there's porn, like it's very hard to control. But your private network is good and safe, and we are going to build a hard wall with only one entrance into your network and private IP to everything else, right? How many people have a network that looks kind of like that, or maybe 2 entrances? Yeah, I think that's probably the bulk of it. It's not that many. You guys must have like highly multi-home systems. It's because you work with AOS. They like can actually build that stuff. But most of our customers are looking at a hub and spoke, maybe 1 or 2 internet egress points, right? And that model really worked. I mean, for 15 years, essentially, that was state of the art. Where it's breaking down is the internet trend is killing it. Right? As people actually are starting to use the internet, CRM, for people who don't use this, is customer relationship management. So the #1 CRM in the world right now is Salesforce.com. That's what we use from Salesforce. It's also what Cisco uses. So that's how we all does. But Google Drive for storage, cloud mail, cloud compute, AWS, all that stuff. So more and more people who are doing their work, not just on Facebook, but actually doing the business of getting the job done, they're not going to the servers in your server room anymore. They're going out to the internet. And to take all of the bandwidth from the remote site, and then you pay for the ISP, the remote site bandwidth up. Then you pay for the bandwidth down to your corporate site, and then you pay for it back out to the internet. People are starting to realize I don't want to pay for those bytes 3 times, and I don't want to choke them all into one big next-gen firewall box, hopefully MX or ASA box. And and I don't want to pay the latency for all of that, all those extra round trips. I just want direct internet access. 99% of my traffic now is internet bound. I want to get it to the internet. And people are slowly starting to make this migration. It's early days, so I think 10, 15% in this room, I bet you guys are actually ahead of the curve. It's probably more like 90%. And if AT&T and Verizon had their way, it would stay at 90, 99% for years to come, right? They can charge a lot more money for MPLS than they can for direct internet connection. The reality is, as MPLS declined and moved to a direct internet connection, it spawned kind of another market of companies. Some people call it IWAN, I-W-A-N, which I think means intelligent WAN, but that's the brand Cisco uses, so I really should know. I think it's intelligent WAN, and we do too. We use that same thing. This is the Meraki version. This is the Cisco collateral for the traditional ISR version. And this is the idea of trying to transition people from big MPLS networks, high bandwidth, very high cost, and move at first some of their bandwidth over to direct internet access, maybe also with MPLS, and then eventually probably get to a all broadband network where some of the very small amounts of your bandwidth that actually are site to site start going cryptographically secure instead of service provider hardline secure, right? So what that means is like a site to site IPsec VPN. I'd like to be the only people in this market, but it's not true. There's in fact like 25 vendors in this market. You guys should all look at Meraki, and if not Cisco, for the answer to these problems. But I think this is another example of the people who were predicting this trend 3 years ago. They're the ones reaping the rewards right now. I hope we're in that bucket. In this case, we didn't make nearly as many missteps as we did on the mobile device management. The people who are really scrambling right now are people who have been building traditional equipment for a long time and can't turn the corner, especially MPLS specialists, and service providers who are an enormous part of their P&L based on MPLS that they can't justify the price for anymore. So my tip to you is negotiate your MPLS price. I bet you those guys are ready to deal. And the third one I want to mention is the cloud. So this is sort of how Meraki is born, is on this idea of a cloud transition. Everyone loves talking about the cloud as if it's its own transition. I don't think that's true. I think the cloud is just another part of the idea of people actually starting to believe in the internet. Right? So I'm chalking this one up to Al Gore. I think the reality is, if I use the internet for my personal mail, and I use it for Facebook, and I use it to talk to my kids, and I use it for Skype, why can't, and it's so easy, why can't I also use it to store, business information, or actually use business techniques doing it? The number one company, I think, that really created enterprise cloud and like blazed the trail for companies like mine is Salesforce.com. I really believe they fought the hard, brutal battles, so the rest of us don't have to. But now companies, it's not just Meraki, it's companies like Box. Anybody using cloud storage? Scott, you guys are really cutting edge here. I'm impressed. Somebody asked me the other day if you started a company today, what would you put in the cloud and what would you put on site? And luckily I have an IT guy, but I think I would fight to try to get anything in the cloud I could if I thought it was secure. So if the vendor was trustworthy, essentially, I would put in the cloud. And I would want to build my site so they have just highly redundant internet access. Because 99% of my traffic is going to go there anyway. I looked at our site, so we have a big site in San Francisco. I think we posted a few of you guys there in the past. We've got about 450 people there, and we are 450 20-something San Francisco techie types. And we don't monitor, we do monitor, but we don't limit shape, firewall. They can look at anything they want on the internet. And I cannot tell you how much Google video gets used on our bandwidth. It's the number one bandwidth usage, except for downloading large data files because my dev team has to, but it's by far the largest user. So I know 99% of my bandwidth is going out to the cloud anyway, going out to the internet anyway. And people want that ease of use. And so if we're going to use Salesforce.com and we're going to use Box, what else can I get out there? I think that's the trend we're going to keep seeing, is this move towards public cloud. We've seen a lot of hybrid cloud and a lot of private cloud options, and I think those are all good. But anyway, I think this is the trend we're going to see. So this is an example of how we teach people at Meraki, what is the cloud? Cloud is like SDN. We talked about SDN at breakfast. It's had so much marketing, it means nothing anymore. So we usually say, cloud is all about transition. 10 years ago, if I was going to run backup for my 450-person company, I would run backup using Seagate. I would buy 200 Seagate drives, I'd put them in a room, I'd get all the cooling and the power I need, I'd plug them into machines, I'd run agents on all the laptops, and I'd back up every machine. I actually believe if you started a company today, you didn't have legacy issues, and you tried to do that, that would be kind of crazy. I mean, Box, or Dropbox, or Google Drive, or the 27 other ways to do this that don't involve buying racks, wiring extra power, almost across the board. It's a good idea. Microsoft to Google Mail is pretty obvious. Although I think one thing that's interesting is Microsoft themselves conceded. Microsoft has been saying for the longest time you need to have your own server, Exchange server, and they conceded, right? What's the name of their product? 365. I gotta tell you, you're really happy. You're really fine. I'm super impressed. We we hire a lot of techies from San Francisco, and they're so excited about knowing the new buzzword, they get that question wrong. They say Azure, is that what it is? It's not. It's 365. So Cisco is, I think, the interesting case study here, at least for us. So Cisco is the market leader in networking by far, by any measure, for sure, right? And Cisco tracks trends, I think, just about better than anyone. They also have this enormous pile of cash. So when John Chambers and now Chuck Robbins, when they feel like they could win by buying a company, they buy a company, and they are very, very quick about it. So it helps if you are trigger happy and have lots of money, like you are going to acquire a lot of companies. And what Cisco did is they saw this transition from storage. They saw this transition in email, and they're looking at their own business and saying, there's a chance, there's a 10% chance, a 5% chance that this could happen to us. If something like this happens to us, and we are market dominant, even if we lose 5% market share, it's like total catastrophe for Cisco. And so they basically put their budget, they put their balance sheet to the test. They bought the largest cloud-managed company, and that's how Meraki became part of Cisco. It cost them $1.2 billion. And that's like having balls. Like, that's a bet on believing this cloud trend is real, right? Someone the other day asked me, actually on stage, since Cisco isn't a cloud company, what is it like being part of that? What is it like being part of Cisco? Cisco is an enormous cloud company. It's like the 4th biggest cloud company in the world. It's just that they also sell switching and routing, so they don't get any credit for that. But for cloud-managed networking, when it came to protecting their switching and routing business, they were willing to bet $1 billion on the idea that this trend is real. And I think that for all the tech startups and Merakis in the world that are trying to find these trends and start up a company, when you start a company, it costs you $100,000, probably from friends and family. Well, it cost these guys $1.2 billion to bet on this trend, and they did. So I think that kind of proves this point. That's what I got for the trends. I did want to take a couple minutes just to talk about how you actually do that. So anyway, Innovator's Dilemma is a really interesting book. How many people here have read The Innovator's Dilemma or know about it? This is an interesting point. This guy wrote this book, and when the executive who signed the check for the Meraki acquisition, when he wrote a blog post, he wrote a 1,000-word blog post on why he did it. He quoted this book. He used the exact language from the book. He didn't say it was from the book, but if you read, you could clearly see. And the idea is pretty interesting. It's this idea that if you are a big, enormously powerful company, you probably got that way by being really good, by being really effective competitor in your market. And being good means finding something that works, investing heavily in it, and listening to your biggest, most important customers. All of those things hurt you when it comes to trying to build a disruptive technology. It's all extremely good at building sort of iterative technology steps. Right? But if you want to take a technology trend like this boom in the internet is going to create an MPLS decline, how do I turn that into a business? Or this proliferation of devices is going to create a market for MDM, for mobile device management. If you want to take your vision of the trends and turn it into a successful company, you have to be willing to essentially disrupt the existing ecosystem. And that's really difficult. So the case study I use here is usually Salesforce.com. So back 8-9 years ago, if you were going to keep track of all of your customers, let's say you were Cisco and you want to keep track of all your customers, you would buy what's called CRM, Customer Relationship Management, almost certainly from something like IBM. So the leading ones were IBM and Microsoft. Let's say blue and yellow, IBM and Microsoft. And those guys, every year, they came out with their next best version. And it could hold more customer records, it could run more interesting reports. It had what's called, in 2004, they started saying, it now has EI, business intelligence. Most people said that was a oxymoron. But it's incremental build out of the technology, right? It always involved having a big server somewhere and upgrading that server and powering that server, all that stuff. And it involved all this extra security that you could do. You put it behind a firewall, you could lock it down so only your IP addresses could use it, etc. And then Salesforce.com showed up and they said, hey, don't do any of that. Don't buy any of this stuff. We're not going to operate within the IBM ecosystem or anything like that. Instead, we're just going to have a website. Cloud wasn't really a thing at that point. We're going to have a website you can use, and you can put every contact of every customer you have on our website. We'll store it for you. Actually sounds kind of reasonable to say that now, but 8 years ago, that was lunacy. It was lunacy. It was the most important information in your business. And these Salesforce.com guys were saying, don't worry about privacy. Give it to me. I'll take care of it. The internet's totally safe, and you'll be fine. And they blazed the trail. And first they found, weirdo customers who, really, really couldn't run a single server, but had to store some amount of customer data, and so they used Salesforce.com. There's this book called Inside the Tornado, which is about tracking trends. This is the first bowling pin in their analogy. It's the early adopter, right? They found these early adopters, and the early adopters are nothing like Salesforce.com customers we have today, right? They were not companies running billion-dollar P&Ls. They were companies that had, maybe they were nonprofits who had, 200 customers who just wanted to keep track of their addresses and didn't know how else to do it. Those are the first set of Salesforce.com customers. And then the system got a little more secure, and they started doing daily pen tests from McAfee, which is a great way to secure your cloud. I do that now. And they got a little more customers. Then all of a sudden they found this nice little seam, right? IT companies would maybe do this sooner because IT companies kind of believed in the internet, especially people who worked in it. So small IT companies, and then they slowly got bigger and bigger and bigger. But as time went on, the product got better and better. So if you use Salesforce.com, maybe you can only store 1,000 records, but Microsoft was storing 1 million records. And then Salesforce.com was able to store twice as many, and Microsoft increased by 10%. But Salesforce.com had the power of this new cloud architecture. They could throw unlimited servers and unlimited storage at your problem, and they could upgrade your system overnight because it was all in the cloud. Microsoft and IBM, they couldn't compete with that. So even though Microsoft and IBM listened to their most important customers and they executed better than anyone, they could only increment their performance of their product 10%, 50% each year, whereas Salesforce could increment the performance of their product 100% year over year, 200% year over year. In fact, they had a release where the maximum customer count went from 150,000 to 2.5 million in a dot release, 2.3 to 2.4. It was essentially ridiculous, and they dwarfed everyone. And right now, in the most enviable position in the market, Salesforce.com is the biggest company in the space. They have the most market share, and they're the fastest growing. I want that. I want that title. So that's the power of this idea of the innovator's dilemma. If you can build something that's completely differentiated, that you can track one of these trends, you can exceed where existing, even enormous companies like Microsoft, IBM can't succeed. Salesforce.com was started by a handful of people and a shoestring budget. In a lot of ways, Meraki runs a similar model to this. We started out with really small customers and people who thought maybe managing networks in the cloud would be okay. And over time, we've been able to build and scale out our system so we can do tens of thousands of APs or switches and firewalls by managing them in the cloud, whereas it's very hard to do that from our competition. The Junipers and the HPs of the world, they just can't compete with that because they have to build controllers and servers that you're going to upgrade manually in your racks. And I think that's in large part why we've had so much success with AOS. They've got this vision to take this sort of thing to market, and they can test it and verify and do quite a bit and bring it to you guys and make it successful for them. So that's what I've got on trends. I have lots of Meraki information if you want it, but I do want to open up. I know we have about 10 minutes left.
Yeah.
So I do want to open up to questions and any questions?
Your MPLS decline, I'd be interested to understand the data versus the voice portion of that.
Yeah.
Nice, when you've got call centers and.
Yeah, I'm with you.
thoughts.
Yeah, so I think,
Can you repeat the question?
yeah. So the question is, on the MPLS decline point, how do you deal with the data versus the voice issue, and how do you deal with data centers versus end sites? So I think you put your finger on the number one lever that service providers have to try and hold on to this market. They'll only provide you QoS with MPLS. And they're going to try and hold on to that as long as possible, I think. Probably until a challenger like Google or someone like that shows up and offers it even for significantly more and people start to move. Like, I think what we all would love is if I could get, for my site in San Francisco, if I get 500 megs of broadband and 5 megs of high quality of service back to my SIP trunk, I'd be done. I don't need MPLS. I need a small amount of high QoS bandwidth for my voice back to my SIP trunk, and I need an enormous amount of bandwidth for broadband. What we see people doing who are on the bleeding edge here, who are trying to move quickly, is they're doing dual internet links and LTE backup. We support that in our platform, and so do a lot of the competition. And we see people who are doing hold on to MPLS, but you can downgrade your bandwidth so it's just for voice, and then you run your data on your data, or at least your internet bound data on a broadband link. I've seen people cut their WAN cost to a third, even by keeping MPLS, but just dropping the MPLS bandwidth down to like the minimum, only using it for voice, and running all internet traffic off of broadband. I think you're right. Like, if you've got very sophisticated voice, and I've got like call centers for support and sales and stuff. That's what's going to hold. I think that's what's going to slow the transition down. As far as the data center goes, I think the data center is like right for this transition. In fact, data centers right now, there's less and less bandwidth coming in and out of the data center, and more of the data center is being used for heavy compute. That's why like AWS and AWS EC2 and S3 are so successful, especially S3. I mean, it's just enormously successful for storage. And so on the data center side, I think if you have a big data center and a bunch of sites, you just make the data center your hub in an IPsec VPN hub and spoke, you're in really great shape. But I think voice is a great thing. That's going to be the problem.
Hey, Todd, give us your 3-minute sales pitch on Meraki.
All right. Okay, here we go. So this was supposed to flow with the discussion. So Meraki, in 2006, we were founded actually out of MIT. And we were founded because Google saw a presentation where we were showing a great way to connect a very large outdoor network, very, very large outdoor network, that could all be managed basically as one thing, and use it to do awesome internet exploration, test new protocols, new loads, new kinds of nodes, new kinds of link rate algorithms, all that stuff. And in order to do that, we were like grad students at the time, you really had to log into all of these nodes. We had like 300 nodes in the network. And you had to manually log in CLI, telnet in each one. It was telnet, by the way, not SSH. It's embarrassing. And we had to like upgrade the node, and then you had to configure the node, and then you had to wait 2 weeks for like everyone to use the internet and the data to collect. And then you logged into all 300 again at the end of 2 weeks and collected all the data, and you created the charts, and then you could write a research paper on that, and it worked great. The problem is it just was such a pain, because you had to manage 300 nodes. So we built a website to do that. In 2004, when we first built that website, like building a website to solve a problem, that was the default solution to all problems. Like today, if you ask a 22-year-old, I have any problem in the world, how will I solve it? They'll be like, I can write you an iPhone app for that. That is the default solution to all problems. Well, in 2004, the default solution was I can write a website to do that. That website was called Dashboard, and it still is today. Google saw that, convinced our founders, don't do advanced network algorithms for large-scale outdoor mesh. Work on managing networks from the cloud. That'll change the world. Outdoor mesh is guys agreed with him, dropped out of MIT, moved to California, and Google became the first investor and the first customer in Meraki. Google actually bought 1,000 nodes sight unseen and had to wait 6 months for delivery while we actually built the nodes. So that's confidence from a customer. So that was in 2006, Wi-Fi. We pivoted a couple times and turns out in figuring out what we would do with the Wi-Fi. So we had hotspot Wi-Fi, then we did outdoor muni Wi-Fi, and then finally we realized enterprise-grade wireless for schools, for enterprises, for public agencies. That was where we were going to make a big success in here. It's been a great run. That was 2006. 2010, we got enormous amount of feedback from our customers. I love cloud managed wireless. Why can't I have cloud managed everything? And we started to realize the vision shouldn't be cloud managed wireless. The vision should be cloud managed IT. And that's the transition that we can really make, and that's how you really affect the whole industry. Wireless for you guys is one component of what you do. The wireless has to plug into a switch. Those switches have to go through a firewall, then back to the internet or over MPLS or however it is. So we want to build a full cloud managed stack, and that's what we've been building ever since. So we launched cloud managed networking in 2010 and 2011 with a switching and a security appliance. So today we have indoor and outdoor wireless, all the way up to the highest performing wireless in the world. We've got layer 2 switching, layer 3 switching, and fiber aggregation switching all the way up to 10 gig. And we have our MX, which is our security appliance. Still, we're using the term security appliance, but as part of that IWAN, intelligent WAN transition, this will also be our next-gen router. I think we're not going to use that term as our marketing language, by the way, but I don't know what it will be. So IWAN, next-gen router, and MX, and we believe that should be one box. Like, you can make it simpler by making it one box instead of two, and we're going to hold on to that. One unified platform. And then MDM completes our ecosystem. We just launched that this year. Right? And so then you can really manage an entire school or an entire company's network and the nodes that connect to the network from one place, and that's the dashboard, the same dashboard that we hacked together in MIT way back then. And that's sort of the vision of Meraki, is this idea of cloud managed IT. John Chambers, 2 earnings announcements ago, he got up and said he was feeling bullish because he had just gotten his highest growth quarter in 2 years. And he said, Cisco will be the #1 IT company in the world. That is bold. Meraki, and John made me recite this back to him, will be the #1 cloud managed IT company. We want to be the #1 cloud managed portfolio. We've got the power of Cisco, we've got partners like AOS, and we really believe that the technology is right and it will ride these same trends we're talking about and provide you guys with a far lower ROI, far easier to use, and give your technicians that much more confidence in really using all the power of that equipment. So that's what we're excited about, and we're hoping to bring all of that technology to you guys, to AOS, and to the rest of the market. I will say, I wish that I could have partners like AOS all over the world. So as far as the debate you were having, I vote for... So, as far as the debate you were having last night, I'm with the global guy. I would love to see some expansion. But anyway, I really appreciate the time today.